Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you to our keynote conversation panelists. Want to get to the transaction that brought your two companies together in a minute, but let's start with a little more background. Giacomo, we heard a little bit about Palermo's history, but maybe you could give us a little more background on the company. Many of us are probably familiar with it, know the name. Could you help us understand kind of the size of the operation, everything about you guys?
Thanks for having us here today to talk about our business and to meet here with True and Jasper and tell our story. We're really humbled by it. We're just pizza people. So appreciate the opportunity to tell our story. Palermo's has began in 1964. My father was an Italian immigrant, came to this country in the 1950s. He worked in the construction towel terrazzo business, and in '64 opened up an Italian bakery called Palermo Bakery on Milwaukee's east side. I was 3 years old at that time, and then in 1969 opened up a restaurant right next door to Palermo Villa, to Palermo Bakery, and he began servicing, full-scale Italian restaurant. A year after that, he closed the bakery and opened up the other side as a restaurant. I wish he would have kept the bakery because it was a phenomenal bakery. I go to Shortino's a lot, and it reminds me of our old Palermo bakery back then. And then in '79, he started, the story goes, there's probably no Balistreri's in the room, but Sal Sendic Balistreri sent my father a package of Stouffer's French bread pizza along with their produce order at the restaurant. And so my father said, "What the H-E-L-L is this?" And then Sal Sendic says, "That's my point. You should get into this business." Because we would serve French bread pizzas out at the bar. I'm probably taking too long, but that's okay. At the bar, because there was such a long line. Anyways, we started manufacturing French bread pizzas in 1969 and '79, and sold the restaurant, and we opened a plant on Milwaukee's south side, 8th and Maple, and that's where we started. So from there, we just grew the business. I mean, he showed me his business plan, and his first year was to make $1 million, and at the bottom of the envelope, there was 10% profit. That was his plan. He goes, "So what do you think?" I go, "That sounds good, Dad. Let's go ahead and do it." And that's what we did, first year. So and it's grown ever since. We just really focused on sales and grew the business. And then infrastructure always followed. And then in 2006, we opened a new facility on Canal Street to manufacture our pizzas that we sell, our brands, the Palermo brands, and Screaming Sicilian, Connie's, Surfer Boy, Urban Pie. And that's where we manufacture today. We have our brands, and we also are the nation's leader in partner brands, private label. Many products that we manufacture for the grocery industry are custom manufactured. We have probably 400 different varieties of different types of pizzas that we manufacture for the grocery industry. So we're marketers and manufacturers, and sell our products, across the U.S. We're opening a second plant in Jefferson, Wisconsin, coming up in a couple of months. And that'll probably put our employee amount at about 1,200 employees and about 200 million pizzas annually.
Wow. So that's a little bit about the background for Palermo's. TrueMan, maybe you could share a little bit of the story behind Funky Fresh Spring Rolls.
Absolutely. So first I want to say someone thought this was Coors Light. It's actually Be Clear alkaline water. It's like Coors Light because it's smooth and cool going down. There's a buddy of mine, his company, and I said, if I'm going to be on stage, I got to bring your water with me. So shout out to Marty back there. But Funky Fresh started literally almost 10 years to the date. Around 2012, I was laid off construction worker. I had to move back home with my parents because bills got tight. I was going bald, about to turn 30, like all of the things that men are afraid of, and it was just like everything was happening to me at once. And I decided that, you know what, I need to take control of my life and I need to do what I enjoy doing. So after like learning about healthier foods, I took my love for fitness, which I was a wrestling coach at the time, and I started working on eating healthy, and I lost like 60 pounds. And I started making different meals, like literally out of my parents' house. My dad's like an old school Vietnam vet, a man's man. He's like steak potatoes guy. He would love all these healthier meals I would create, the sweet potato and black bean burrito. Even though he was telling me at the same time I need to find a real job, I still was like creating these healthy meals. I'm like, Dad, there's something with these meals gonna happen. And I took that sweet potato and black bean burrito and I turned it into a spring roll. And I thought, like, man, this would be really great. And I was just like literally selling them out of my parents' house, super legal. So if anybody from the state of Wisconsin here, I'm sorry. It's too late. We did it. But so I started, you know, from there, I started selling them at like, we did get a commercial kitchen eventually. Started selling them at farmers markets and festivals, like around 2014, 15. And I just kept growing the business, you know, year after year, going to these markets and selling them frozen. Just by show of hands, anybody familiar with Funky Fresh? Any Funky Fresh Nation out here? Okay. All right, we got about 28% of the room. We're gonna get there. So after there, everybody know. So going into like 2017, I just had this vision, like me and my son, we would walk through the grocery aisles and I would look at the stores and it was like really the same type of like spring roll, egg roll was on the shelf. And I just thought like Funky Fresh could be something unique like that. It could be on the shelf. So that's where the seed was planted for me. But, you know, I went through actually an organization called Fab where we learned about, you know, becoming a food manufacturer, and it was just like too much at this time. So I opened a restaurant up in the Grand Avenue Mall. The Grand Avenue kind of, you know, dissolved, and we moved into the Sherman Phoenix where we are currently. And like I think that year we rolled like over 100,000 spring rolls. We just kept growing, and then going into 2020, our business was kind of at its peak. I don't know how far you want me to go with the background, because I think we're going to talk about that in the questions. But during this peak, you know, COVID happened, and literally COVID affected literally every person in this room, and we had to pivot from there. From there, we started to sell our product frozen just to keep the lights on. And then I realized, like, you know, people are at home, people want good quality food to eat still. We started selling it directly off our website. Me and my son would go, like, door to door almost and sell our spring rolls. And that became more popular. We got a commercialized package. We got into like Outpost first, and got into Syndics, and then Funky Fresh just kind of blew. And then us and the Pizza Papas, we took it to the next level.
So that touches on some of the milestones. You mentioned kind of having that, being in that grocery aisle and having that vision, starting to get that vision of what maybe this could be. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit of when did that vision start coming together? What is the vision for you in terms of what Funky Fresh might be able to potentially grow into, and when did you start thinking, maybe I need someone to work with, a partner, to make this a reality?
For me, the vision kind of started as a consumer. It was like I wanted personally to eat some food that was healthier, that was quick, that, you know, tastes good. So I created it essentially. So from that point, during COVID was that point where we just pivoted and got into it frozen. I thought like, okay, this could be something great. So our relationship with Palermo was like organic, because I already knew Giacomo through his mentorship with local businesses, and I actually met him at an event in 2017. We actually snapped a picture. We should have got that picture up here, Giacomo. Dang, we got an epic picture from 2017 where I took a selfie with Giacomo after meeting him at an event like this, and I just, in my mind, I said, man, I would love to be like Giacomo. I'm like, I feel like Palermo's is a household name in Wisconsin as far as pizza goes, and I'm getting to see like one of the guys who took it to the next level. And I'm looking at Giacomo, he got cool shoes on. I'm like, I got cool shoes too. Like, he got pants, I got pants, we got so much in common. He had hair, I didn't have hair, but I said, you know what, we still could do some amazing things, whatever. So that's the first thing that imagined me. It's like you see somebody in front of you who could do some amazing things, like why not me too?
Mm-hmm. How did that, I mean, so you mentioned meeting him and the mentorship relationship developing. I guess how did that relationship grow over the years? Because you guys had a relationship before the acquisition eventually happened in early 2022. How did that relationship grow over the years?
So the initial conversation happened like in the Sherman Phoenix, like in the middle of like our lunch rush. And I just thought like, let me just ask Giacomo this one question. And I said, how do you think Funky Fresh would perform as a frozen product. And he was like, "It'll probably do great. It's great now." He talked about what a gold standard is, and he said a bunch of big words about frozen companies that I didn't understand at the time. But I said, "All right, let's just see what that looks like." And we had some conversations initially. I actually met with them at the villa, Giacomo and Peter, the COO. And they seen that got our name trademarked, and so much value in having a brand. A lot of companies just sell a brand, and a lot of products might be inferior, but the brand is really what sell. And for us having a strong product and a strong brand, I think that they seen the vision that we could maybe connect with each other.
Mm-hmm. So Jasper, M&A is kind of part of your portfolio of what you work on at Palermo's. How has M&A historically played a role for the company, and how do you envision that growing in the future?
Yeah, I mean, historically, it's really been more pizza or pizza-adjacent items, allowing us to either scale in different regions or use kind of some synergies to either grow distribution of a brand, work with manufacturing, or be able to move into different kind of categories within pizza. I think that was, pre-COVID. And then during COVID, what we saw is a huge boom, similar to TrueMan's story, where you had all these brands, all these companies had to make this major shift. And in that shift, people are staying home, eating habits changed significantly, spending habits changed significantly. So we started really looking to see all of these companies coming up. And there are some great concepts coming out that we know, especially in frozen, that we could help scale. And by scale, I mean, there's a brand, like TrueMan's saying, brand equity, and the brand is really what we look for. The name, the essence of it. Talking about something that's organic in nature, not in the ingredients, but the story. Something that has a strong story, people attach to. We look at that and how we can leverage our internal assets in terms of development, sourcing, manufacturing, distribution, sales, marketing, all the back of the house stuff, and focus primarily with founder operators that we can really scale the business. TrueMan gets to focus on, in this deal, all the fun stuff really. And we have to focus on, how do we sell this brand? How do we get this thing national? How do we develop this? So I think in the future, what we're looking for is brands that we can scale quickly. And I think we're going to be looking more at frozen products, snack, handheld, single serve, items that the everyday consumer, I always say it's like, if I can make someone's life easier with a product, that's what I'm looking for. Mm. But also something that's healthy, which is what I kind of value as well.
TrueMan, you mentioned kind of a couple different kind of more spontaneous conversations or interactions with Giacomo in terms of that relationship growing, asking him what how you think it would work as a frozen product. How did this deal come together? So I think it was the winter of 2022, we get a press release that says, Palermo's is buying a majority stake in Funky Fresh spring rolls. I'm guessing there was a bunch of work and things before that made that happen. So how did this deal all come together?
So this is a pretty epic story, I gotta say this. All right, so like 2 weeks before COVID happened, so that's 2020. This conversation has been, a lot of these deals take years to happen. It's not like January I met you, say, hey, here's money, whatever. But so I think like 2 weeks before COVID happened, I was on my way to meet with Giacomo and kind of like further the conversations, and I got in a car accident. And like literally I had spring rolls with me, all the spring rolls like flew up in the air, got on my face, sauce everywhere. I was more upset by my spring rolls than my truck getting damaged. That's another story. But COVID happened, that just kind of, I don't know if we lost communication. It was more of like, hey, everybody's kind of focused on what they had to do. We had to keep our restaurant going and figure things out. So a year into, this is going into 2021, we had a few conversations just to catch up. They seen that we got into like 19 stores at the time, and we wanted to have a conversation. And we just so it's like January of 2021, I think our first conversation was. You guys had a pitch deck of an idea of how we would potentially structure a new company, how we could work things out, and then some financial terms were in there, whatever. So like that for me, like as a first time merge, acquisition, client, customer, like just trying to figure that out. But a lot of, if there's any lawyers in here, you guys are the true winners in here. So it's true. So we learned, we had to get the legalities together, and honestly, just being transparent, it was kind of daunting. It's like, you guys, big multi-million-dollar company, you got, in my mind, it's like just the biggest, strongest lawyers is me. Then from my side, it's had me, my lawyer, my best friend, or my cousin, or something like that. But I would say this though, like, one of the things that intrigued me about working with Giacomo and Jasper is they operate with such high integrity, and because we had a friendship, and that could get kind of, it could get messy if you got a friendship involved and money's involved, and like ultimately they want the best deal for them, I want the best deal for me. So I think it, and I would say this, we did a really good job of us not communicating this a lot. Like, me and Giacomo didn't communicate as much throughout the negotiations, because we did have that personal relationship. So I was talking to more of like with Jasper and some of the other people and the lawyers, whatever. So I do appreciate that, but it was some times throughout the negotiations where things were like, I'm not sure where this is going. It was, and Giacomo gave me some really good advice as a friend, but he had to also stay true because he's a businessman as well. So those communications happened, and just a real quick story. Like, throughout this whole thing, which solidified it for me wanting to work with Palermo's, was Shark Tank actually contacted me in the middle of our negotiations and wanted me to apply to be on the show. At this time, we had a LOI written, you can't negotiate, whatever. And I'm just like, are you serious? Shark Tank, the biggest show for entrepreneurs on the planet, wanted me to be on there or whatever. And I said, I didn't want to like play both sides of the fence, so I told them like, hey, Shark Tank, contacted me and wanted me to be on the show. They was willing to let me out the LOI to negotiate with Shark Tank because they ultimately wanted what was best for me. And for me, that was like, that was what sold me on them. Like, that's a lot of integrity to have to say, you know what, we could potentially miss out on this huge company, because Funkfish will be one day, and work and get with Shark Tank. And I just thought, like, you know what, that for me, that was what wanted to seal the deal with Palermo's.
One of the things I'll add to that, and what we really wanted to make sure was, in acquisitions, there's a lot of paperwork that's involved. There are a lot of terms. There's so many terms to a deal of, operating agreement. How is each entity going to operate? What are your roles? What are mine? What are yours? How is it structured? And the thing we wanted to make sure was, between TrueMan and us, we both knew exactly what was in all of these documents you're signing. And I think one of the things, a lot of times you hear is people sign something and they come back 5 years later and say, oh gosh, that was an awful deal. I can't believe I signed that. Well, unfortunately, you did sign it. So we wanted to make sure with TrueMan and I is, everything in there we agreed upon, we talked about the repercussions, what happens if this happens, what happens if this happens, and because, the only way, this partnership would be successful is if we were both on board and we both were really, gung-ho about where it's going to go. And if there's any internal strife on, well, I don't agree with the way this was worded or this, after the deal is inked, it's going to be nothing but problems. So we really wanted to make sure that all of that was taken care of. And it took longer, but at the end of the day, I'm really glad that we did it that way.
Giacomo, TrueMan mentioned that you guys didn't necessarily communicate too much or in the negotiation part. Was that an intentional thing, or how did you go about maybe protecting that friendship and relationship while still making a business deal?
Well, I think we looked at it from a standpoint of the business. We have a large business and we have a lot of moving pieces and parts, and so I focused on that piece. If we look at growth, Jasper and True are working really, really well together. So if I'm going to entrust them to work out a deal, that's exactly what I did. And only had to get involved on a few occasions, and and True and I knew each other before, so we had a good friendship. So I don't know if it was intentional, but it's just how we operated. Jasper was running this process, and like he said, there are a million moving parts and details. So every aspect of that operating agreement and all the agreements they went through, they made sure they understood it. It wasn't just here's this document. There was a lot of parts to it. So that allowed us to focus on the business at Palermo's. Well, they focused on this acquisition. But I will say one thing. When True and I first talked, one of the first times, you had mentioned to me, hey, there's a building I can buy. And I remember it. Remember that building? It was on State Street. He said, hey, I can buy it for $500,000, and maybe we can start making funky fresh spring rolls. And we talked about manufacturing, and number one concern is food safety, quality, building a team around it, and food safety is really number one concern. And so when he looked at what it would take to buy the building, and then remodel the building, and then bring a staff in, and then have them operate, it didn't make sense for the business. And so we looked at it from a different angle where we would contract manufacture that product. And that's what Jasper and True were successfully able to do. So we avoided that capital investment, but focused really more on the sales and the marketing and the growth of that brand.
Jasper, you kind of talked about all the different roles and the details and the operating agreements. How did you guys go about thinking about how to structure this and how to define those roles and who does what? And how did it all work out before you actually signed on the dotted line?
The way we look at these deals, and especially with this one or anything in the future, we want to make sure that the founder or whoever's running the company at the time of acquisition is still going to be involved post-transaction, because they're the people who have the ideas. They're the ones who know all of the ins and outs of the business before. So one of the things we really wanted to make sure was TrueMan was involved in everything going on. And just 3 hours ago, we were at a cutting, sampling new product that we're trying to make, and just constantly making sure that you're involved in every step. And like I said, in order to make it successful, you need everyone's buy-in. And in order to have that buy-in, one of the main things in the operating agreement was, what is your role going to be? And it's not just going to be the face of it, it's you're going to be involved in helping us get to the gold standard product. That's product that we can go to a contract manufacturer with to mass produce. And that was a main negotiating point, but also, all of the marketing elements of it as well. So just kind of going down the list of, what do you want to do? What do we want to do? What are you best at? What are the things we don't want to touch? Because I think so many times, with larger corporations, they mess things up. They kind of put their spin on it. And with smaller businesses, you don't need all of that. And that's the thing that we loved about TrueMan was we can be nimble. TrueMan can be nimble. You can do things without the checks and balances that we need to go through. So it was really making sure that we just kind of thought, 5 years out, 10 years out, how do we want this business to operate, and put that into writing very specifically.
TrueMan had an audience question that was about, in considering buyers, what were some of the non-negotiables for the vision and plans the buyers had for Funky Fresh? Now, you didn't exactly run an M&A process with lots of bidders and things like that, but what maybe were some of those things for you that were kind of non-negotiable that had to stay in place after this deal closed?
For me, the biggest non-negotiable was on the actual product. I didn't want to, have our product, which we have fresh ingredients, we have all natural chicken, we have a lot of stuff. I didn't want to dumb down the product just to make a buck. I didn't want to sacrifice our integrity of the product or the brand. And that's something that they've been adamant that they want to continue to do, and that's one of the reasons why I got it. So I didn't want to just pull out like a less inferior product just to make some money.
Mm-hmm. Curious, for the contract to make it at a larger scale than what we've been doing in the restaurant, the ingredients that go into it and things like that, is that, you want to honor what he wants to do with not reducing the quality in any way, but you still have to also be able to scale it. So that's something you had to look at closely to make sure it was feasible?
Yeah, and that's one of the fortunate, elements that we were able to bring is we have a full sourcing team. So we're able to buy ingredients from all over the world that are just as good as the ingredients you were putting in your rolls from the beginning. And since we have a network of about probably 12 other contract manufacturers across the country, it was easy to find someone who can make this that we believe in, can make the product to the standard we want and at a price we want. So, it wasn't, I don't look at it as we ever had to say, is it going to be less or better? It was kind of we'll be able to figure it out. It's just going to take some time. We're going to have to put our heads together, but, I think with food, ingredients have come a long way in recent years, and I think we're able to source ingredients, like I said, just as good or if not better than some of the products you were even having before.
Yeah, like literally, I'll say about 95% of the products of our manufactured product is the same, or ingredients of our manufactured product is the same ingredients in our restaurant. So like that means a lot to me, because it's like me just being someone who's a food enthusiast and passionate about food. I want to see like real food getting put in products or whatever. And I think that's a misconception, that people think it's manufactured. They think it's just junk made up, modified, whatever. Like I said, I've seen the first spring roll come off the line, and I've been there through all the process as of like 3 hours ago, like literally just trying some stuff. And 95% of our ingredients that we use is in the manufacturer. And if not, some of them better quality, yeah.
Interesting audience question we just got for Giacomo and Jasper. How do you incentivize or encourage, whether it's TrueMan or another founder you're working with, to maintain and retain that entrepreneurial spirit that got them to build a product that was something you wanted to acquire?
Well, I think with True, we looked at the long-term vision and goal of the company, and we looked at where do we want to go, and do we want to exit? And so we talked about that, and we built in incentives throughout the process, because True, he's really a brand ambassador. He really brings a great culinary aspect to the business, and so we just set milestones up for the next 1 year, 5 years, and if we're around, maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 years from now, who knows what it's going to be. But we set those milestones, and it's incentive. He's not going to go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We have a goal in mind, and we're going to keep working until we reach that goal.
And I would say on the entrepreneurial side of things, I didn't look at this collaboration with Palermo as a lottery ticket for me, just to be like, oh, all right, we merged our companies, and I could just relax on the beach or whatever. It's nowhere near that. It's a lot of work to be done. And for me, just being a hustler, being a true entrepreneur, I look at it as another challenge. It's like, all right, we had a new level, but with new levels and new challenges comes, and I want to be able to accomplish things at this level as well. So for me, it feels like starting over. I don't know how about you guys, but I'm like, it's like rejuvenated my passion. You work in a restaurant. I don't know if any restaurant owners in here, but it's a grueling business, and it's a low profit margins, and it's a lot of hours, and you're away from your family. And I did that to get to this point, but now I'm like, at this level, it's like, I'm just a gamer. I'm ready to compete, and go further with this.
Mm-hmm. Another audience question for you, TrueMan. Wondering if you pursued any opportunities outside of Palermo's, or you mentioned Shark Tank, and just any thoughts on am I missing out on some better opportunity because you chose to go on this path, or was it the trust was there, the right relationship was there, and full speed ahead?
That thought I think it's a real dangerous thought to play with, because if you live in regret, it's hard to continue to move forward. So once we closed the deal, for me, I didn't have any regrets with it, or I didn't think, oh, maybe I should have did this or that. I just thought, all right, this is an opportunity to get to the next level, get further. So for me, it was like, all right, it's like you catch an interception and you gotta go, or you catch a ball, you gotta just keep running. I'm not gonna look back and say, oh man, maybe I should have did this move or that. Like, no, I just wanted to catch the ball and go and score. All the sports analogies today. What's up?
All right. Baseball season just started. So we talked a little bit about the vision here for the Funky Fresh brand is, right, it's to go national, right? That's the long-term vision. What are maybe some of the key milestones and steps to realizing that?
Yeah, so right now we're in about 200 stores, and that was a very intentional goal we wanted to get to. We wanted to test out the product, see how it's going. A big metric in our industry is how many units per store per week is this product selling. And we wanted to see kind of how it's going to do at the price point it's at right now. And right away we kind of know we have some changes we have to make. We want to make this as affordable as possible to the consumer. The more affordable, more units per store per week, the better velocities we're going to get, and inevitably the more stores we can get into from there. So our next major milestone is really going to be getting an anchor tenant at a national retailer. Really where we want to play with this product is in the better for you natural category. But the cool thing about Funky Fresh is that it can be really sold anywhere, and a lot of the stores we're in right now are not necessarily the better for you channel. And it's doing very well. But aside from that, once we get a new national account, we also really look at the brand as not just spring rolls. You know, it's the name Funky Fresh, the essence of Funky Fresh, where we can go with it from here. And, you know, we're actively working right now on different categories within the Funky Fresh name, which is one of the reasons why we loved it so much, is because we know it has a lot of legs. We know it can really scale quickly, and we know there's a lot of other levers we can push within the business of TrueMan's IP, of all these, you know, great culinary builds he has in his mind of, you know, bowls is one of the things we're looking at. So being able to, you know, create a better for you bowl for breakfast or for lunch. And it's really being able to, you know, leverage all of your ideas to create a much bigger brand than just Funky Fresh spring rolls.
There's a lot of thoughts going around in his head right now, recipes and everything. So we got a lot to play with, for sure.
Jasper, you mentioned at the start the importance of brand. We were, you know, kind of wondering about, you know, what do you look for in acquisitions, and that the organic brand. I guess, do you need? Is it the story? Is it consumer validation that there's a market there, that there's a fit? Like what tells you that's a brand that for sure we can partner with?
I think when you know, I love walking around the grocery store as much as my father does. Not as much as you, but I do love walking around the grocery store. And one of the things, specifically with spring rolls, is, you know, TrueMan's product is something that's entirely different from what's in the market. So for us, being able to look at products that are not readily available, or the types of flavors we're going after are not readily available, for us that's a win, because we're able to bring something new to the marketplace. You know, that's really what I look for. I think you might look for something different.
Yeah, so I think it starts with relationships. As a company, we've established relationships with our competitors, manufacturers that manufacture similar or adjacent type items with us. And it really starts with a phone call, us wanting to meet the owners. Let's just talk. And sometimes they're a little apprehensive, like, what do you want? And I think just that collaboration, we've made some great friendships in our industry, whether it's in dough or in pizza toppings or in pizza or pizza alternatives. So I think it starts with that curiosity, and it starts with building a friendship. And what we'll do many times is try to break down those barriers. Hey, why don't you come on down? We'll give you a tour of our facility. We'll show you what we'll do. We don't have any secrets. And that starts it. And then they're like, wow, okay. You know, and then we have this friendship. And then from that, all sorts of questions start to come up, you know, about whether it's employees and how we engage and what we do, and suppliers or other manufacturers or equipment. And we begin to establish a friendship in the industry. And that's what we do with True, and that's what we do with a lot of the other companies that we are talking to right now.
Did have a question about, the question is, how much space out there in food and beverage sector for M&A and consolidation? So this is kind of a deal where it's, you know, kind of adding to the brand portfolio, but is there opportunity for consolidation in food and beverage?
Well, I would say there's opportunity. I mean, pure and simple. If you look at the food and beverage scene nationally, and there are some food and beverage people here in the room that really know food and look for white spaces and what's growing, what's not, where are the trends. We just got back from Expo West out of California, the largest food show in the country. And if you look at all those trends and the things that consumers are looking for, I mean, I think that in our industry, there's just an unbelievable amount of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Another audience question on the topic of brand. Do you try to leverage the Palermo's name to help grow Funky Fresh, or do they get marketed independently, or how do you approach that part of it?
I think we've leveraged our relationships. You know, that's really what we're doing. So we were out in California about a month ago, and we met with our large broker network and had a chance to bring True, and True was in those meetings, and you were nervous at first, but they were blown away with
Just
you.
a little bit.
And your story. You know, so it's leveraging the relationships we have, whether it's in supply chain or whether it's in the sales side or the broker side, and that really gave us a really good confirmation about True and the brand and where it can go. So it's just leveraging our relationships. I mean, we're not really using the Palermo name. They know that we're a pizza company, but we share a lot of the same relationships, whether it's in trucking or the frozen food space or the buyers or brokers and all those.
Another audience one here, thinking about how do you vet which stores you may want to work with and how they may impact the product's image?
You know, I think, especially for this, you know, it's really the better for you category, but, you know, I think in any grocery store, I believe there's a space for this product. Now, that's not the case for some of our products alone.
Yeah.
And I know that's a big, you know, there's a lot of arguments per se that go around of should this product be in this store because it's not selling or maybe it's not the right fit. So we look at a lot of data to see what is the best fit for each brand. And that's one of the things internally that, you know, we spend a lot of time on. Now with Funky, you know, right now, since it's just an infancy, there's not a whole lot of data that we're playing with. It's really this whole test we're talking about, kind of testing it out in the market and then eventually having more data points that we can pick and choose from there. Yeah.
So currently we're in Woodman's, we're in festivals, Piggly Wiggly, Outpost, Syndic's, I can't think of it right now. But my goal for everybody in this room, in the next 7 days, pick up a bag of Funky Fresh. Y'all gonna need food in the next 7 days, so pick up a bag and tell us what you think. That's it.
And that's really what it comes down to is right now we just really want to get consumer feedback. And then from there, you know, we're really able to leverage all the feedback, make the best possible product, so when we're ready to go national with it, we have the best foot forward right there.
One very large retailer, I remember at our booth, was talking to you, and she loved your story, and she really loved where it could go in this very large retailer, and so that was really a great encouragement as to the story, the brand, and the brand essence, and so that was very encouraging, I think, if we look at those relationships.
You mentioned, I think, the idea of an exit earlier in the conversation. It means that, are you already, I guess, what's the long-term vision here? Are you going to go national, but then is it eventually Palermo's sells the brand, or you don't know, or how do you envision that when it all goes right?
I'll let you go first.
I can say it? No, I won't. Can I? Is it legal?
Yeah, you can say that. I mean, I think we want to grow it and sell it.
Yeah, we want to grow it and sell it. Yeah,
that's what we want to do.
You know, and that's simple.
So,
we gotta say the number. That's
I mean, we have a number in mind, but I think we got to scale to a certain point, and you know, it's looking at an exit, right?
For me, it's important to establish that in the beginning. Or do you want to pass it down generationally to the next family? Do you want to grow it and sell it? I think having the end in mind in the beginning is just smart to have. You know, if not, you're buying it yourself. It's no other way. So you're either selling it or you're buying it from yourself. Do hard work. So for me, that's what I want to do, and maybe create other lines and stuff like that. But yeah.
I did have another audience question. Just is Palermo's open for selling the business, or are you more on the buyer side? Obviously, family business, multiple generations.
Well, our standard line is we're buyers, not sellers. So, you know, there are a lot of investment bankers in this room, and the big joke at these food shows is that we went to an investor conference, in the middle of it, a food show broke out. Because, you know, you can see all the bankers and attorneys walking down the aisles. And the thing with us is that if we look at the deals that we look at, I mean, we have probably 20 or 25 different companies or brands that we've talked to that we know we could scale. You were just in Italy last week, and we're looking at some technology there. So it's all about growth, right? So if we were to exit in however many years, you're not just going to retire on some beach. I mean, your mind is going. When you think about products and products that you can get into and scale, and whether it's in the retail side or the food side or the beverage side, I mean, I think that's the energy that we have. Always looking at growth and how can we grow with different brands, different products, different companies.
One final question for each of you, just maybe a final lesson you'd have for anyone who might find themselves on either side of a similar transaction. Giacomo, if you want to start us off, or
can I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna turn and look at the group. I would say this, and you gave me this advice. He said, it's going to be some time where you're going to feel burnt out, fatigued doing negotiations. Whatever. You said that early on. I'm like, what? This is exciting, right? And so we started negotiations around January. In my mind, I had a, not knowing, I thought, okay, it'd be a couple months or whatever. By December, I was ready to quit. I said, you know what, forget this. I'm just about to just roll spring rolls for the rest of my life. And, we had a conversation at like Stone Creek Coffee, or like, hey, just, you got to just get through the tough parts. It's going to be tough times or whatever, but you got to just stay the fight, stay the course, and that's just good advice in life in general. We might have times where we feel like giving up and you might be so close, whatever, just stay the course, one foot after another. One thing I do is I collect pennies, right? A lot of people see pennies and they just walk past it, but a penny is still valuable. Just because it's not a $100 bill doesn't mean it's not valuable. So if you collect pennies throughout time and throughout life, you gain wealth, whatever. If you collect wealth and knowledge throughout life, or even small little bits of knowledge throughout life, you gain knowledge, whatever. So coming to this conference is like collecting pennies, whatever. So like getting through that negotiations was like just collecting a ton of pennies and knowledge and learning how to read legal jargon, which lawyers, again, you guys, winners. But for me, it was like I had to learn how to, what are operating agreements and what does that stuff really mean. So for me, I was getting fatigued because there was so much information getting thrown at me, along with being a father, along with running a restaurant. It was just overwhelming. But I had to take a step back and just do one thing at a time. So for me, it was like learning one thing at a time, one day at a time, one penny at a time.
I would echo that, but I also say, having an advisor who you can really rely on. There's a lot of parts of transactions where you might not know what's going to happen or what this means or what any of these terms mean. And I think it's really, you need to have an advisor who's been through it. And I think a lot of the things I heard about everyone kind of talking before was, the wealth of knowledge, how long they've been in this, how many deals you've done. Each deal is different, but it's best to have someone who's been there, been through this to help you along the way, because they've been through it and they can go a million other ways. So I think who you choose is really important on the legal side, but as well as if you're going to be a buy side or a sell side transaction, your banking partner as well, making sure that they're there with you and making sure that they know what you want to get out of it. Because you need to know going in what you want. Their goal is to sell it, but you need to know what your goal is too.
And I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Jasper and True said. Going through a transaction, the advice would be not to deflect to your attorneys or your advisors. You've got to know your deal. And so that's where you two spend a lot of time, paragraph by paragraph, looking at it, so you know what you're signing and you know what it is. Other advisors have your best interest in heart, but they may not know what you want exactly. So where we made the most progress is where the three of us sat down and talked, and we hit roadblocks, and we just said, here, this is what do we want? And it was so simple because we were aligned from the start about what we want and the general terms of the deal. Correct? It was pretty easy. But I would say is to know the documents you're signing, but know your business also. Don't deflect to an advisor.
Have one, but don't overly count on them.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that's good advice. Joining me in thanking TrueMan, Jasper, and Giacomo for being our keynote conversation today.